also joined with Octavio Peralta and Bobby, as we popularly call him. Bobby and I also go back for a long time. He manages association. Also, the reason that we came across, he's also been one of the initiator of creating Asian Society of Association Executives, where all the national associations, industry association executives could come together and create a voice. So it is Bobby's brainchild, and of course, people from India, from Korea, Japan, China, Malaysia, all have joined. And we look forward to this forum to be much more strong in going forward. So I'm sure we will learn a lot of things from Bobby. We also have with us Edward Ko. Unfortunately, Edward is so good looking, we are not able to see him. So we'll have to just be impressed with his voice, which is equally beautiful. Edward is the Executive Director of Singapore Tourism Board. Needless to mention that he certainly brings, sorry, I should say Dr. Edward. Sorry, Edward. And he brings with him huge experience in terms of destination management. And needless to mention that Singapore has been in the top performer in terms of bringing association, association business to Singapore. And it's a fantastic ecosystem in terms of the Bureau, in terms of the Tourism Board, in terms of the International Association bringing in. So Edward will be bringing his expertise from Singapore and to tell us how Singapore is also dealing with this situation and what we can learn from Singapore, because Singapore has been a flag bearer for a lot of other Asian countries in terms of best practices. Last but not the least, we have Adrian Gritt. Adrian is the Director General of Association Agriculture, Sustainable Agriculture Association from UK, London. Even though the association is based out of Switzerland, Adrian is based out of London. Am I correct, Adrian?
Yeah, close enough.
So, so we would like to understand from Adrian what is the story from Europe and what is happening in his association, and generally what wisdom he could share with us in this time, in this challenging time. Of course, Adrian and I did not come to a conclusion about a word called disruption, but I personally feel this is a disruption, and disruption need not to be a technical disruption. It could be disruption, societal disruption. It could be our mindset disruption, and how this disease or how this present situation is disrupting our so-called normal and bringing us to this new normal. I am Prashant Saha, the CEO of CIMGLOBAL. CIMGLOBAL is into association management, is into conference management, and runs its presence from US, Europe, Asia, and Middle East. And so we have a great fortune in knowing several associations, work with them from last 22 years. And as we see these last 3 months, even though companies who are profit driven, they have suffered a loss, certainly, and they continue to bleed. Whereas our focus today is association. And to me, associations are mission driven. And when such situations are there, I think association has to be a much more stronger. And that is the whole idea of bringing this key industry leader on this platform, so that we are able to learn and we are able to understand how we can navigate these things and come out as and make it work in our favor. So without much ado, and of course, thank you all those who are joining us today from different parts of the world. Thank you so much. Please feel free. You have the general chat on the right-hand side. So do feel free to send in your question. After this, our general session is over. I will take some of this question from you and ask our panelists for their views. So let us start. Edward, okay. So finally,
Stunningly handsome.
Edward, welcome, Edward. Okay, great. Good. So you can see us now, and of course, heard us. Great.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start with Dean. Dean, you have done a lot of studies with association success and association looking forward report, and your last report has been very, very intriguing. What is the state of the affair at the moment? If you could give us some US perspective. I know you have knowledge of others, but a US perspective is very important because they certainly are much more advanced in terms of association, maturity-wise. So we would like to know what is happening in US.
In the short term, from the middle of March to the current date, much like in every place in the world, the United States associations are simply adjusting to mandated virtual work, adjusting to the cancellation of large events and conferences. The spring is one of the leading times, particularly in healthcare, for annual meetings, and adjusting to the lost revenue as a result. Between 30 and 35% of association revenue comes from face-to-face meetings, based on recent economic impact study of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, like businesses everywhere, there's an adjustment. But recently, in just the last week or two, in particular, I think many associations in the U.S. are now starting to look beyond the immediate reaction to government restrictions on travel, and starting to think, how do they reposition themselves in an environment that is going to be characterized by less likely attendance at face-to-face meetings, less budgetary support out of organizations for things like membership. But with the clients we've been speaking to, generating is a great deal of innovation and a great deal of new ideas on how to be more effective efforts. I think many organizations of all types tend to think and do what worked for them until it doesn't work. And the pandemic within the United States has forced the association community to be more creative and think more clearly about how they truly deliver value to their members and for their mission, instead of simply repeating the same programs year over year.
Okay. Dr. Bakar, I'm going to come to you now. Of course, you represent a healthcare association, okay? And as we see going in this whole world, how these frontline workers and doctors, paramedics, nurses are contributing and fighting this from the leading this fight from the front line. What do you think, as a medical representative of medical association or medical association per se, how they are dealing with this challenging situation? Because yesterday I got to know very different aspect of medical association also. I was told Mayo Clinic in US already furloughed 40% of their staff, and another 20% of their staff is on a pay cut because not too many people are coming to their clinic for, let's say, heart disease, cancer, or any other appendix, other disease. So this is a very, very tricky situation. People, general people like us, we think now the medical association or medical profession is in demand, whereas some association or some hospitals are letting people go. So where is this disconnect happening? And how associations are dealing with it?
Thanks, Prashant. I think, it's a very tricky situation for all of us. I'm sure everyone agrees. And the important thing is there is no right answer to it because we have never seen such a situation in our lifetime. So this is the first time something like this has happened. And as you mentioned, it's actually a disruption of a different kind. Now, you are very right that medical professionals are in demand, but at the same time, the medical professionals are the people who are at highest risk in this situation. We whether it is doctors or it is paramedics or it is support staff, everybody is at a higher risk of getting infected because this is kind of occupational hazard for all of us. Everybody can say, okay, I can stay back home, but we cannot do that. Second thing is, it's very difficult to make, general people understand the nitty-gritty or the criticality of situation. Now, yesterday there was another news that a lot of hospitals are not seeing regular patients. So this is bad. Doctors should not be avoiding patients. Now, people don't understand, and the media persons also don't understand that if a person who is non-COVID patient walks into a hospital, gets at a higher risk of getting COVID. And he may not be, at risk of life because of his existing illness, but he may get into risk of life because of COVID infection. So we have to create a balance between, seeing patients and not seeing patients, and when to see and when not to see. Let this be decided by medical professionals who know the, technicalities best. Now, coming to the business part or the revenue part, all those people in US it is a different situation because at Mayo Clinic I know that everybody is on a salary. They don't get kind of revenue based on patient numbers or anything, and their footfall is very low at all healthcare facilities because they don't want COVID to spread to patients coming for other reasons. So that is where a lot of consultations are happening, digitally, whether it is teleconsultations or it is video consultations. And as far as we can avoid, we are avoiding to get the patients into clinics or hospitals and manage them, through digital connect. Unless it is necessary, we are trying to avoid patients coming to healthcare facilities because in that case, we are exposing them to a greater risk of getting COVID. So for once, doctors are not wanting to see the patients physically, despite that is the best way to handle the patients.
Okay. Adrian, if I may ask something to you. Adrian, can you hear me? Okay. So how do you see this new approach of doing business? Because your members are all over, right? All over the world. And how do you see this approach of no touch and bringing technology into this? Is it something your association has been thinking of?
I think very much so, and I think all businesses are looking at it, and it's, in essence, all associations are businesses as well. I mean, I think I really appreciate a chance to be part of the discussion. I think as we look at the discussion today, we're all very aware of the current crisis, and clearly all of our thoughts are with the people who are being impacted, family, friends, colleagues, and society as a whole. And I think you've instigated a discussion here whether the new norm is a much improved, stronger, more caring society, and possibly much more connected than it has been in the past, at the same time individually separated because of the current challenges we're facing. I think for associations, we have to consider our own people first. And as I look at all of my members and their employees, we're all looking at working in isolation from home. I think I'm very lucky that most of my team have always worked from home. We are a remote workforce. My team is scattered globally, and my members are scattered globally. So whilst we've continued to work almost as we always have, it is within new conditions. I think individually, we are people who are homeschooling their families. They have their families to manage at the same time. So simple things like the expectation of delivery and timelines is very different. So renegotiating commitments, renegotiating delivery timescales is necessary because in reality, at the very beginning of this issue, sat down with my team and encouraged them all to consider that they're working 4 and 6 hour days, not 8 hour days, because whilst with the best will in the world they would try, they have families to manage and that will impact their time. So I'd rather we planned correctly and then reset expectations. So I see in society a greater patience to some extent. And I think that is playing out now in terms of how we need to contract with our members on the delivery they're expecting from and with us. They're all migrating through a crisis activity and prioritizing operational delivery and managing their supply chains. They're all actually still very committed to more strategic thinking as part of that new consideration. And whether it is for sustainability as currently listed and defined, or whether new challenges on nature and other needs are there, I think that new approach will be very much around setting and managing delivery. I think for us associations, it's important to be really clear on our USP, our value proposition, and really leverage that in order to retain that engaged membership, and then deliver through that rather than try and find lots of bolt-on and add-ons. I think that would dilute us individually and actually challenge what our members need to see from us. So we need to, through our USP and our value proposition, leverage what we're doing for our members. I think the new norm, if it is as we expect it to be, a lot less face-to-face interactions, I think technology is a wonderful enabler for a lot of that. And I hope people will be looking at why they need to meet as the first activity, and then what's the best way to meet as the second consideration. I think I'm seeing, as with today, great ways of delivering excellent conversations, good share of tacit knowledge. Most conferences have that sort of mix between knowledge share, knowledge delivery, but also that tacit networking. And that element may be the most difficult thing to do remotely. And I'm seeing that now with working groups and committees coming together. But what I'm also seeing is people are seeing a value to their time, and there is a positive reflection on not needing to travel for that 2-hour meeting in Rome. Whereas in the past, they sort of naturally did that. So hopefully it'll open up a new way of working for everyone. We recognize now that a majority of our workforces, where they are not needing to be at a specific place, at least, can do that very effectively remotely. And I could imagine a society where Fridays become flexible Fridays, and why don't most people work from home? When you finish your day, you will already be at home and you can start your weekend much more quickly with much more close support to your family and a much richer work-life balance. So that's a real positive opportunity. It will require that engagement with our members and with our own teams to see that we endorse and deliver that and support making that a success. You're muted, President.
Well said, Adrian. I think it does certainly make a lot of sense. I'm going to come to Bobby. Bobby, you have been in Philippines, and of course, you have seen very closely associations in Asia. Even though it is not as matured as US market or to some extent European market, but Asian associations are doing pretty much well. And because of the financial model, Asian association, barring few of them, most of them not able to monetize their content. And like a small example in India, where majority of the association have life member. So their revenue models are very, very different than our international European or US association. And that certainly, situation like this comes under a lot of pressure. So tell us something about the perspective of from an Asian association. How do you see this new process that we are going through, and how do you see this taking forward?
Sorry, I lost you, Prasant. Can you repeat the last portion?
I am saying that you have been seeing Asian association very closely, okay, and worked with pretty much in different countries in Asia. Unlike US and European association, which are much more mature and financially secure, Asian associations not been, not all of them. How do you see this situation will push them to?
Yeah, I mean, you rightly pointed out that associations in Asia Pacific are relatively still in the nascent states as compared to, let's say, the US, Europe, and even Australia. The good news is that being new, many associations here in the Philippines and in Asia has already been acquainted with technology, especially using mobile applications and also webinars and through different means like Zoom or Skype. So, and population also is relatively young. And so the adoption to technology is quite fast. And but you're right that we haven't really monetized content, and because of this pandemic, at first associations, like anybody else or like human nature, is you go first to the stage of denial, and then acceptance, and now action. And as I said, the action towards use of technology is quite fast, because we have been late adopters of technology. But again, there's still need to be able to, as Adrian mentioned, to provide relevance to your value proposition, and go back to your purpose. So I think it's time for associations to really now to soul search and reset and look at the basics, relevance, relationships, revenue generation, and finally now, because of the pandemic, another R, which is risk management.
Risk management, yes. So that's absolutely, and I am sure not many associations in Asia are thinking about it or thought about it. So maybe this could be a beginning of this, not just risk management from a association day-to-day running perspective, but also from the larger event or any other activity they are doing it. But one thing is for sure, that Asian association has been, they need to catch up a lot in terms of developing the content and how to monetize this content, rather than depending on only the membership fees. I will come to Edward. Edward, you run one of the most prize sought after tourism board. Several countries as a pride of Asia, several Western countries, give example. I want to know that Singapore has been the flag bearer for bringing meeting, whether it is corporate, whether it is association businesses, and created a beautiful ecosystem, whether it is from bidding a conference to hosting a conference, and then all the stakeholders coming together to ensure that the project is done well. What do you think that going forward Singapore will be communicating or taking some steps in terms of assuring, reassuring the association around who are looking at Singapore as a destination?
Well, thanks for the question. As we hope that we can
Cannot hear, Adrian. Sorry, Edward, I cannot hear. Maybe.
Yeah. Can you hear now?
Yeah, it's breaking sometime. I don't know what others
maybe
are
we're
thinking.
just cutting your video and seeing if just audio makes it a bit clearer.
Let me see. Is it better now?
No, same actually.
Okay, testing. I hear myself very well, but you can't hear me very well.
Cannot hear at all. Needless to mention that Singapore bandwidths are fantastic. And so I'm surprised why the voice is not coming. In fact, I just received another complaint from women also from Marina Bay Sands that he's also not able to hear much. So is it a specific issue from Singapore? I don't know. Edward, can you hear us properly?
You can hear very well. We can hear one very well. But I can hear
sorry, Edward, I cannot hear at all anything. I do not know what is the issue that side. Okay, so I'm going to come to Dean. So Dean, to straight, what are the opportunities you think for association now?
Terrific.
Men,
First of all,
opportunity, yes.
Let's say, first of all, I've changed my mic, so I hope my sound is better from previous. I think there's several opportunities. It's easy to become focused on the loss of attendees at face-to-face events, but not understand that you're gaining opportunities to create virtual relationships with actually more people. Prior to the pandemic, our global environmental scan of the association strategy environment indicated a lot of what we're going through now is simply an acceleration of trends that were already occurring. A movement to more virtual relationships as the technology platforms become more sophisticated, more user-friendly, as the audience becomes more accustomed to using virtual relationships, and so I think there are opportunities to expand the outreach of associations to people they were not effectively serving via face-to-face meetings. And that is not to take away from the value of those face-to-face meetings, but to echo an earlier speaker, you're going to want to know why you're having it, what the purpose of that meeting is, and be much more specific about why you're holding a face-to-face meeting when you might be able to engage even more people through a virtual platform environment. So I think that's one of the opportunities. Second, for those in the industry or professional sector, associations are service wings for industries and professions. Your members are now faced with issues that they had not historically been faced with. It's a phenomenal opportunity for associations to fill that gap through training, through education, by bringing industry leaders together of all sorts to discuss how the organizations will adapt. So, for example, one of our clients does our companies that do cleaning of textiles for hotels. Well, clearly their industry is going through a lot of disruption now, but there's not going to be less requirement for disinfecting hospital and hotel linens after the pandemic. So their organizations actually have a tremendous opportunity to improve service, but how is the question? And the association right now is putting together a member virtual meeting of CEOs of those companies to discuss how best the association can help those companies adapt to that changing environment, which will eventually be very positive for them as a source of business, both for the association and for their member companies. And so I think the key right now is to first understand what long-term implications there might be within our industry profession, things that will substantially be different 3 years from now, not just next month. Two, what are the implications of those changes on the people you serve? And three, of those implications, what is the role for your association to help serve them? And I can make the case you should ask that every year, regardless of the pandemic. But I think there's tremendous opportunities for associations, but we have to look at it as an opportunity for service, not an opportunity simply to defend the status quo.
Okay, very well said. In fact, one of the point that Adrian also mentioned or wrote here is that now, instead of reaching, let's say, 2,000 people in a conference, now in a remote base, we are able to reach more people than physically. And it happens in a physical conference due to money, due to cost related to airfare, registration. A lot of people don't travel, even if they want to. So are we seeing this growing in a remote base, or is that, will people pay money? What is going to be the most important in those areas? Adrian, if you could just highlight all those areas.
Well, I'm actually seeing exactly that. So, conferences that had a couple of hundred attend, they're now fours and fives, because you can have 2 or 3 attendees from the same organization, whereas before that organization would cost up the attendance and go, you go, come back and tell us all about it, because of the cost of travel, but also the time of travel. So it is absolutely there. I think it then opens up the discussion over, if you then charge for that remote conference, what's your costing model and what's reasonable for people? But I'm definitely seeing that as an opportunity that actually, as an association, you have an opportunity to engage more deeply into your members' companies, because you would normally get roughly the same person who would attend your events or your workshops, and he'd be the representative from that company. But actually, remote access enables you to be much more prolific within that company and much more useful to a broader set of employees of the same company.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Dr. Makar, you wanted to add to this. If you could unmute,
yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I was listening to Dean and then to Adrian. I think, see, there is a plus side and there is a minus side. It's, as you mentioned, that if we are having a virtual meeting, maybe we have a very, for big reach and a lot of people can connect. But the problem is that if you are in a physical meeting, if you are in a live, that means you have taken your time out only for that meeting and you can't do anything else, because you are there and you are there with a purpose and you are attending that meeting. If you're not attending, you are visiting the exhibition. If you're not visiting, you are interacting with people, you are networking, you need to meet some people, discuss some projects. Here, since you are sitting in your office or you are at home, you get interrupted by your phone calls. Maybe some work is pending in the office, so that takes priority. Rather than connecting to the meeting, you are connected, but your attention is diverted to other things. I can see there are so many questions coming in this session. So after 1 hour session, you have questions which can be answered maybe over 3 hours. But in a physical meeting, you will do that in 10 minutes, and everybody else has the opportunity to get connected with the speaker of his talk and discuss what they want to discuss. So physical meetings offer far different, far better opportunities, and you have dedicated time for that meeting. So you are serious about that meeting. Once it is a virtual meeting, like I am getting, as medical professionals now, we are disconnected from pharma industry as far as the physical connect is concerned. Now, every pharmaceutical industry is interested in maintaining that equation with their KOLs or their, business partners, you can say, or their prescribers. How do they do it? So what they're doing, they are trying to give you a webinar on COVID or something, COVID and heart disease, COVID and diabetes. And every day I get, 5 or 6 webinar links that this is happening now, this is happening now. Can I connect on all those 5, 6 webinars? So this is something which can be done easily. So there is, overwhelming bombardment of webinars happening because you don't have physical contact. The minute you are able to create those live meetings, I am sure people will move towards those live meetings again, because that offers a totally different perspective. You are having it's a job that you are there for in a meeting with a purpose, and you are, you are looking to get that purpose fulfilled. In webinars, that seriousness is totally missing. Now, second thing is, what is new normal? Now, what we have understood now that, okay, we have this alternative also. So if we don't have the physical contact, if my patients cannot visit me, they are visiting me, they are connected with me on my video consults. Now, earlier we were not offering these facilities. We wanted everybody to come. Now, patients will also understand, look, I cannot make up for this appointment, so can I request for a video consult? And maybe we'll have a slot allocated for video consult. So both the things will go in parallel. Both the things will carry its own value. And the new normal will be, I think, what we were doing in the past will continue with more of technology inputs, more of technology built into our daily life.
This is certainly making sense. Yeah, that's another point, which I completely agree. In fact, some people have already started asking. One particular has been Cressida M. Alde asking that with sponsorship expected to decline as a result of business closure, what revenue generating activities do you see association can embark on? Anybody, panelists, want to answer to Alde?
I'm happy to address that a little bit, Prasant. I think there's a couple of issues. One is many associations, particularly in the U.S., over the years have put together a tremendous portfolio of benefits for their members. But when we conduct research into the member value proposition, it's rarely that more than 5 or 6 of those benefits are truly important or drive the decision. So I think step one for many organizations in general is to eliminate programs and services that were taking up resources but not delivering value to the people you serve. And that frees up staff time, that frees up financial resources to invest in the tighter core of programs that really deliver value. Second, and there were some questions on sponsorship, as we see it, instead of 25 small sponsors, you may have 5 larger sponsors who will be treated as peers in the industry, as strategic partners, not simply sources of funds for advertising. So it will be a more concentrated approach to commercial relationships. And finally, we've had some questions on content. Again, content strategy was the #1 strategy the associations identified in December of 2019 as what they believed was critical to their success, followed closely by online education. Both of those strategies are unrelated to face-to-face meetings. And so I see this as a continuation of movement into the online and digital relationships with members. And while the individual amount of revenue per person will decrease, the number of people you can reach increases. So, for example, this particular event is being broadcast worldwide to 100 people, to over 100 people. To get 100 of us in the same room in Delhi or in Amsterdam or New York would be very, very expensive and difficult. And so you'll have smaller per dollar per person, but you'll have more opportunities and more people to receive those funds. And that's going to take a different mindset out of a lot of executives on how to navigate that portfolio.
Of course, both the arguments are absolutely valid in their own area. I personally, I do not see it kind of clashes with each other. I think it's complement each other, and maybe it will expand the market much bigger than what we see today. Like Dr. Makkar just mentioned, that going forward, his patient will now have an opportunity to do a video consult rather than coming all the way down to his chamber. At the moment, earlier, that was not available to him. But that area, I think a lot of exposure has happened through telemedicines and other things. And as Dean also mentioned, that I think the mindset has to change. And I think that is what we are experiencing. So this business of online work from home or maybe a physical meeting will be a new norm, which we personally have to adjust with, that both these things has to remain. But coming back to opportunities, because there are a lot of questions coming in from an opportunities perspective, is that one, of course, monetizing the content. But monetizing the content don't happen in one day. If you have not planned something for a long time, you cannot certainly put your content and package it and start selling it. So what are the, I do not know whether, Bobby, you have any insight into it because you run association. Is there any other, how difficult do you see this monetizing this content? And what could be the other areas where association can look into specifically post this disruption? You have to unmute it. You have to, yeah.
So talk about monetizing content. Yes, I agree that it will take some time. In fact, our association is now doing that. As you know, industry associations, they have their own unique content that only they within their industry have. And so converting that into a digital format will take some time. And but that's an opportunity for us because of the uniqueness of the content. In terms of other opportunities, I think somebody mentioned in the panel about helping members. So mentorship, consulting, and advisory services would be something that associations can do, and we're doing that. We have a small team of those who are early retired, and so they are doing consulting because we believe that in terms of practice, it would be good for practitioners to really help out and help members, organizations to on their issues about their operations. Other opportunities would be looking for grants, and we're also doing that. Of course, in grant submission, you have to spend the money to the projects, and it should be related to the funders' mandate. But the good news is that you have some residual amount, and you reduce your budget by having programs to your members eh, with other the benefits coming from education through grants. Also, in terms of content, special studies, surveys, research on very specific standards, industry standards, could be something that can also be monetized.
Adrian, I'm gonna. Can you add to this in terms of how association could, be more effective? Now, as I hear from Bobby, that they need to now work towards more to be close to the member, not just using members as a number, but be close to them in real terms.
Yeah, I think a lot.
Any other thought, Adrian? You have it?
I think a lot would depend on the business model of the association. I mean, for my association, it is a member fee scaled by member size to some extent, and we use that to drive the activities we deliver on the behalf, along with some additional funding. But there are so many different business models out there and how they're funded that will lead to how things are offered. I think it still goes back to me, what is your USP, what is your unique value proposition, and how best you respond to it. I was just responding to some comments on the chat from Paddy about there is a need for face-to-face. I have a number of working groups who are developing, and then even subgroups within that, developing new solutions as a community of disparate businesses, some of which are in competition with each other, but can work collaboratively together for the better good of the industry. And that works well when you're developing and brainstorming face to face, and you scribble on walls and boards and put post-it notes up. That just feels easier at the moment face to face. When you have breakout sessions, you have a chance to have a coffee and a tacit knowledge share, that feels better face to face. But I think we will need to get more disciplined about what is the value proposition of this sort of meeting for this sort of outcome. I think webinars, there are so many of them now because we have no other options, but webinars are used for a particular style of thing. We've talked mainly about conferences here, and I think they will have a particular style and flow as an online solution, and we'll have a richer set of opportunities and breakout sessions that you wouldn't necessarily see in a webinar. But the technology will evolve quickly, I think, to deliver all of those solutions. Then it goes back to how do you keep the pace of delivery with the members. I think that's the key value proposition, and do it in an efficient but also very effective way that pulls their information, their questions in, and responds to them in a timely fashion. In what I'm finding for myself is taking longer. It takes a few more iterations because a lot of it is still written word versus spoken word to help build the interaction, and written word is often misinterpreted, and that's the challenge. So I think there's a natural more iterations, so we need to find a way to be much more efficient and much more effective of developing the thinking, developing the new strategies, and developing the solution to deliver them. But I really am very positive that this is something we are seeing happening and achieving, and we just need to come up with some guidelines and rules on good ways of working. I mean, even with face-to-face meetings, I used to go through and say, right, the rules of the meeting are this, guys. All the phones are off. No one does email. And it's like, yeah, you have to commit fully to the meeting you're in and deal with the emails afterwards. That's a natural thing we have to get much better at, and even more so when you're online, when your email is the next icon along.
Thank you, Aaron. Dean, I'm going to come to you with a particular thing, is that there has been report, especially in the US, that several people into the association sector have lost jobs. And I know several people who, unfortunately, very senior level, junior, middle level, also lost job, furloughed, salary cuts, and other things. Now, situations are going to get better, let's say, in 6 months, if we hope that way. Do you think during that time there will be a rush of getting things done? Do you think American Association will then look at to get their work done outside of their globally rather than executing it in US? Do you think there will be more outsourcing of work?
No. No, like organizations of all types, associations are going through a tremendous economic disruption in their financial model. Again, our study, I posted the link on it, it's free. On average, the associations, and we had over 1,000 respondents to our study, on average, 30% of the revenue came from face-to-face meetings. That's a substantial amount. 56% had canceled a meeting by April 1st, and 56% had postponed and moved a meeting by April 1st. So that's a substantial disruption in one of the principal revenue line items for an association, and you don't simply replace that. Partly too, it depends on the industry. For associations serving the hospitality industry or who are actively supported by the hospitality industry, you're in a very different situation than those working, for example, in healthcare, where your members, some of our associations with, emergency nurses and things of that nature have never been busier. The final component of this is to the associations were prepared for the economic disruption. So, for example, we had a risk assessment that looked at what percentage of their gross annual revenue they anticipated getting this year, what percentage they thought of as considered as reserves, and to what extent, if they lost a meeting, that was covered through insurance. And so we found, in particular, small associations were much less prepared to suffer economic disruption than larger associations, who had higher levels of designated reserves, the same reliance on meetings, and were more likely to have insurance. So as we talk various sizes, it's the smaller associations that are going to struggle more than the larger associations. But the larger associations are still pursuing strategic initiatives, and to the extent those initiatives are global and critical, key word, I believe they will continue to move forward with them. It will be a bad year, and that's a bad year for those of us who support them. But in the long term, if your global mission is a global mission, then your global initiatives have to continue at some level.
Before I take calls, or rather question from to all of you one by one, if you have to next 6 months in short term, because while we are making plan for long term, but we also need to know what is there on a short term. In a short term, let's say next 6 months, what are the 3 topmost things you want an association to focus on? What will be your words of wisdom? 3. Adrian, you can start if you're ready.
I guess if I was looking at my own association, it is delivery, progress, and balance working. So I'm looking for my team to maintain a good balance of work, because it's a stressful period for everyone. But we have to deliver and at least make progress to the things we said we would deliver for our members. I am less reliant on events for my revenue directly. So it is about the continued outcome we deliver.
Bobby? Muted, please.
Yeah. I'll go back to the earlier statement about the 3 R's. It's just like when we were growing up in school, let's say 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. For associations, there are also 3 R's. So I talk about relevance. So look deeply about the purpose. Why do you do things that you do? And then also your unique value proposition. The second R would be relationship, internally and externally. Internally, board, staff, and members. Externally would be your partners, collaborators, donors, sponsors. And finally, resources, your people. How do you now transform your people and equip them to the new norm? And also in terms of financial, how do you diversify your resources? So 3 R's, relevance, relationship, and resources.
Very well said. Dr. Makar.
So, in our associations, we have been working on more on planning and finding out what new can be done in times to come. So that, like I am more involved with diabetes association, so we focused on how we can help our patients. We issued the basic guidelines of do's and don'ts during COVID for patients, for diabetes professionals. We are looking at new initiatives. So we are right now in brainstorming and planning phase to get ready by the time everything opens up with the implementation plan, hope for the best and prepare for the worst. That is the plan.
Dean, top three in next 6 months association could execute.
I think there's three. One is protect your critical brand assets. There are things that you do that are essential to what you do and why you're doing it. Everything that isn't critical wastes time and wastes money. Two, and to agree with Dr. Peralta, protect critical strategic relationships, whether that's with key sponsors, key firms that support you, key member companies, whoever it might be. And then finally, look beyond the crisis. It's too easy and let that dictate how we act instead of looking beyond the current crisis to where we will need to be next spring or the following fall.
So from all of you, I kind of fathom that your brand asset or your knowledge, internal knowledge, that your focus of your association or on the knowledge that your association is standing tall, that need to be guarded very well. Relationship at this time is absolutely important. And I think members need not to be, and these are for membership where there are thousands of members. Sometimes it's not possible for an association to focus into every member. And sometimes, because we deal with so many associations, we realize how these marginal members or these members who are not from a very bigger companies, they feel that an association has become more of a big boys club rather than looking after my interest. They just want to become a member so that either they get some benefit from the government or they need to put it into their credential for some other reasons. But I think this is the time for relationship where each and every member need to feel important. And as I mentioned, we all are here not representing company which is profit driven. The associations are mission driven. So that mission need to be kept in mind in the first rather than anything else. And situations such as this need deeper relationship. So I would completely agree with Dean on this. I plan to take some question from the audience and the attendees, those who are there. So would you, any one of you have any specific question, please feel free to ask, which I'm sure all of us can see it, and whoever is comfortable, they will be able to pick it up. So we have a couple of more minutes to answer your question. So please do not hesitate and take advantage of this, August gathering and take their looking beyond the crisis. Okay, very well. So looking beyond the crisis. Anybody has any question?
If I may, President, I'm going to offer a thought while the questions are coming in. I sort of triggered out of the last sentence as you were just sharing with us, that you have to look at your member set and realize they are individuals. And they will either be at a different place on their journey with your association because of their size or because of how new they are. And even if they've been very active they may now be reaching the end of what they needed from the association. So you've got to review again what your value proposition is. So I'm actually reviewing
Absolutely.
based on like a butterfly model over how people migrate across their time with your organization. And actually you have to have a different approach depending on where they are and sort of who they are in various categories. And it's worth doing that because it helps you think about that element of value proposition and relevance to that, because the relevance is to individuals, not just the whole.
Very well said, Adrian. I think that's absolutely nailed it, because sometimes we look at members from one single glass. We do not know how they are, what end of the journey they are, what phase of the journey they are, whether they're small, medium-sized, bigger, what challenges they are going through. And so how to, as an association, how do you master that and review that and to see become relevant to each one of the member? Somebody has asked, when do you foresee association getting back doing conferences? Parul Sethi asking. Anybody want to answer? I understand Parul meant physical conferences. That's what she's mentioning.
So this is Dean West. I think it's there's very much, it depends on who you are and who your membership is. From my standpoint is, we are still scheduled to do face-to-face board meetings, face-to-face speaking at events at the earliest July. But one of the challenges, many people who cancel or who moved a meeting in the spring are moving that meeting to the fall. So we will suddenly have a year's worth of meetings between September and December. And so we're already running into scheduling conflicts because there's only so many places to meet and so many people who can meet. And then people are rethinking their assumptions. Well, we have 100 people instead of 500 people and things of that nature. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty, but if you take half the meetings that were originally scheduled for March, April, May, and June, you move them to September, October, November, December, that's a lot of meetings in a compressed time frame. And so far within the US, a lot of the fall meetings are continuing.
I agree with Dean. I think you most likely will be starting with the live meetings sometime towards the end of July or mid-August. That will be the best case scenario, particularly in the countries where like in India, the numbers have been much less as compared to United States or Europe, and we are very hopeful that by May end we should see a significant decline in the numbers. If that happens by mid-July, I think we should be having live meetings. But you very nicely highlighted that all the meetings that have been postponed are going to be crammed in that particular time slotting, and there'll be issue of getting audience for these live meetings. And to begin with, people will be scared of travel also. If not, many people will be very comfortable traveling.
Final point on that too. So we work with a lot of healthcare associations. So for example, elective surgeries, things that are non-emergency surgeries have been postponed. Well, they'll be taking place in the fall. So if you had your hip replacement postponed, your knee replacement, or the operation on your shoulder because they were trying to keep people out of healthcare facilities, suddenly people are going to want those treatments. And so I think many members in many professions are simply going to be much busier as the backlog of services, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in road construction, whatever it might be, as those services start to take precedence again. I think it'll be just difficult to get people's members' time and attention when I think people are going to be very busy in the fall.
Again.
One question. One more question. Somebody is asking, Daniel Walter is asking, that many of their members are running micro enterprises of their own. What are some of their most pressing needs to keep their business running?
I'm happy to kick off.
Dan, you want to reply?
I'm laughing because I have a micro enterprise, so there's only 6 of us, and I was hoping someone would answer that question and tell me.
It's cash
I
flow.
think here's my take on that as a business owner, separate from association, which is, one, don't pretend that this is going to be an easy year. Okay, this is my 3rd downturn. We're 21 years in business. Don't pretend this is going to be an easy year. And it's going to be a hard year. In a year that's challenging, what becomes critical is you protect the enterprise. The enterprise has to survive it, which means you may have to fire people you love, you may have to drop services you enjoy. The enterprise has to survive. And then within that, there are things that you are particularly good at that are particularly valuable to who you're trying to serve, regardless of your type of organization. Those are the things you have to be able to do. And things on the side are interesting and maybe fun, but you have to be very, very focused right now, regardless of the type of organization.
We have one last question. After that, we'll wrap up this. We have a question from Karan Pahuja. As you will see, association need to have finger on pulse of members of the challenges being faced by them and how to assist in mitigating those issues. For example, our industry faces market shrinkage and how to address that. Adrian, you want to reply? Or do you feel comfortable to reply?
Not particularly, but I'll make a go at it. These questions, my head goes straight to one of the old bosses say, when you're going to be run out of town, make it a parade. So when things are being bad, actually there's a strength and an opportunity there that you should be leveraging. Market shrinkage is a hard one to work out how that actually sees an opportunity, but I think you need to be really clear what your role is in that market. And for an association, you have a role to help support multiple players and provide a space where they can come together in a safe and legal environment to have a conversation to help address the issues at an industry and market level. So I see an opportunity for associations where there are major issues affecting the whole sector or the whole marketplace, that you can help provide that space to come together and work out how we lift the industry together. I mean, it's no good being the only supplier of something. The market needs to grow, and it doesn't grow quickly without others being involved. So there is an opportunity there for associations, if there is market shrinkage, to help the industry move past the current crisis, plan for the future, plan for the new norm, considerate of all those wider things, hold themselves and then hopefully the market account to some of the commitments they wanted to make, but help them through that market shrinkage by helping them leverage and lift the bottom of the market.
Well said. I hope with this we will summarize and this event to our particular theme of how to navigate this disruption and making it work in our favor. I think all the panelists kind of echoed the similar thought process, whereas Adrian mentioned that deliver, balance, and progress. And as I hear from Bobby, hers 3R, if I remember correctly, relationship, you mentioned, relevance you mentioned, and purpose you have mentioned. Whereas Dean mentioned that your brand asset you need to protect very much. This is also the time for relationship and also look beyond crisis. The market is going to bounce back, certainly, if not in 2019 session immediately, but I'm sure as an association, I think are more important at this point than companies is that it is the time of the crisis where association need to be more strong. This is the time, on a good day, some of the members may not need the association because they have their own business and enterprise going on well. But time as such as this, I think the role of the associations are more important. They need to be close to their member. They need to hear them, and they need to also protect their relevance and be relevant going forward. With that, I wanted to thank all of you for taking time out. I know for, unfortunately, Edward from Singapore, I know it's late for him. We could not hear his views unless Edward is hearing us. Thank you, Dr. Makar, for great insight. Thank you, Adrian. It was wonderful hearing you. And Dean, as always, it is always a pleasure interacting with you and learning. Bobby, amazing. Thank you so much. And with this, thank you so much. And you have a great time. And I want to also thank all the attendees, those who have attended. Please feel free to send your question, which we will certainly address through our esteemed panelists later on. This will also, I know, be recorded, will be sent to you, those who have requested. Yeah, with that, be well, stay safe, and please adhere to all the government instruction. And I think at this moment, staying safe, staying indoor is the safest thing and the most intelligent thing that we can do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Prasad, do you take a picture?
Yeah, I think I don't know how to take a picture. You are asking a very long.
Yeah, I already did it.
Oh, okay.
I already took.
Okay.
Great.
I already took.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.